Right, let's move on to the final of our trilogy here, which is Brian De Palma's Casualties of War.
Yes, rounding off with the 1998 effort, which tells us of a particularly shocking war crime on Hill 192, as told by Michael J. Fox's PFC Max Erikson. There's little time to know the protagonists before that, including Sean Penn's Sergeant Tony Meserve, who, after the squad get into a bit of bother, risks his own life to save Erikson, pulling him out of a VC tunnel. However, it seems that the death of his friend, played by Eric King, causes something to break in Meserve's mind, as after subsequently being denied leave, he formulates a plan to kidnap a young girl from whatever village they're next patrolling near and to carry her along and rape her at will. While it's perhaps initially laughed off as a joke, he actually does it, with varying degrees of support from his squad members. Erikson is very much against it, but is kept in line with threats and violence. Even so, he's still trying to help Loy Thu Lee's Than Theon, but ultimately to no avail as this slow-motion tragedy unfolds. On a return to base, he attempts to get some justice, but finds little, with most willing to sweep it under the carpet until a sympathetic chaplain stumbles across him and his story, allowing a modicum of resolution to it all. Now, unquestionably, this and the central event of the piece is pretty powerful and affecting. How could it not be, unless you are a sociopath? As a film, though, I'm rather less convinced of the necessity and quality of it, certainly compared to the other two. While it has a decent cast, and they're all very committed performances, I don't think they can escape the gravity well of the stereotypes they're based on. Penn's in particular, while full of bluster and menace, is played so close to a working class eastern seaboard stock character that it feels almost exploitative. Fox is likeable enough and shows enough mettle to get his character over the line, but ultimately this film isn't going to challenge you or make much of an attempt to understand why someone could convince themselves and then others to do something so terrible. Again, perhaps there is no defence or understanding, but then it does leave this film with no real moral conundrum to leave you with. It's just a straightforward presentation of a horrible thing that happened that we can't learn anything from other than don't rape people.
Yes, or murder people.
Yeah. For all of that, while I'd say it is the least of the films here, it's still worth watching, if nothing else, just to witness the very early career performances of John Leguizamo and John C. Reilly. They got better.
Yes, they're quite green in this film, aren't they?
Yes.
Although maybe it's because his character's so thick, but I did see echoes in John C. Reilly's performance of his role in Talladega Nights.
Yes.
Kind of like puppy-like co-driver friend or teammate friend thing. It was like, I could see some of that in there, which was a bit strange to be in a Vietnam film.
That's what the compare and contrast should have been. Talladega Nights and Casualties of War.
Although, pretty much every film will lose to Talladega Nights so for not having a cougar.
Yes.
That's the furry cat kind with the big claws and stuff, folks. No, not
narrowing down
words. Not other meanings. Yeah, this is... I mean, I guess it's quite powerful, but I'm not quite sure what this film is particularly saying. You're right, it's like, this is horrible. And the fact, I mean, there are a lot of reported atrocities that happened in Vietnam. It's like in the village in Platoon, there's a rape in there, and then there's just straight up murder by Tom Berenger of people there. So there's that sort of atrocity committed by American soldiers, and there's that sort of criticism there. There's presumably some sort of inherent criticism in the language used in all of these films, the way they refer to Vietnamese people, even people who quite clearly are on the receiving end of racism themselves in their own country.
Yeah.
But the actual thing that happens in it, it's like, I'm not even sure why this is a Vietnam film, beyond that this happened in Vietnam, but it's kind of separate from the war itself.
Yeah, I was expecting perhaps for it to make some sort of effort at linking what was going on in the war, the stress they're under, these kind of things, at making some sort of attempt at not explaining why it happened. I mean, it's not quite that, but at least giving you some sort of insight as to how it happened, how they thought this could have been a good thing, or it could have been something that they were morally entitled to do, how this made some sort of sense in Meserve's mind, but it just doesn't, and it all seems a bit perfunctory, and you get to the end of it and it's just like, well, this is just an awful thing that happened, and yeah, like I say, I just don't know what we're supposed to take away from it other than let's try not to have that happen again. Yeah, see, because I think when you look at somebody like Corporal Clark, he strikes me as being very similar to Kevin Dillon's character in Platoon. He's basically just a psychopath. Yeah.
Where it comes to, again, is the key role as a sergeant. Whereas I'm bought Tom Berenger, for me, Casualties of War hinges on buying that Sean Penn lost it when his friend died, and I don't buy it.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, obviously I dislike Sean Penn as his writing proper. Having said that, there are films I have liked him in tremendously, and not just Gangster Squad because he was getting repeatedly punched in the face. Things like, I thought he's fantastic in Milk. In a role that by all rights should have been intolerable, I really, really enjoyed him in This Must Be the Place.
Yeah.
But in this, I detested the character from the start, but honestly more because I think I was disliking Sean Penn, not his character. But I never bought that break that would have been required there to abandon all moral norms and to suddenly do this and think that it was appropriate and that somebody was entitled to take this woman.
Yeah.
And I never bought that, and so because of that, the rest of the film's never sold to me. But you can see, like, John C. Reilly's character is just easily swayed. John Leguizamo's got no guts. Clarkie's a psychopath, but like, they're all doing it because of Sean Penn, and I just wasn't buying him, which is a problem. Yeah,
it almost needs to be more of a character study of him. It needs to go further into his past, or like give us some sort of semblance of rationale of where this inkling came from, because it surely wasn't born out of nothing. But you don't get any of that because you beat him at the same time as Michael J. Fox beats him. So yeah, there's just no way to really get any kind of insight into that character. Now, whether you want that insight or not, I don't know. But if you don't have that insight, then this really isn't anything more than a dramatisation of a news report, and not a particularly compelling one at that.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, where it gets slightly more interesting is with Ving Rhames' character, the lieutenant, who tries to rationalise why they're not going to investigate it.
Yeah.
And then Dale dies Captain Hill afterwards. Like, this, I can actually believe that people like that existed, so I naturally hate them because it's despicable. But it doesn't, I don't buy the bit that actually led to what they're having to refuse to, or to rationalise to not investigate.
Yeah. Something that sort of section where Fox is trying to get some sort of justice, trying to get someone to take any kind of action against this, is probably the most compelling part of the film for me, where he's actually trying to affect some sort of justice, and just being stonewalled is one of the more interesting parts of it, and probably gives Michael J. Fox a bit more room to actually perform somewhat against type, I would think. And he does a pretty good job of it. I was fairly convinced for all that. I found him much more compelling a character, more convincing as a character than Sean Penn.
Yeah.
So that does help with that section. Just, ultimately it's a bit too far into a film that I've kind of not written off, but I've not been all that engaged with up to that point.
Yeah. I want to talk a wee bit more about Michael J. Fox in this. It's unusual casting, this coming after Back to the Future, because at the start of the film, he does feel like Private Marty McFly.
Yes. He
even does that sort of, like, hand across the forehead, oh God, what, I just realised something terrible moment.
Yeah.
And it's, what's going on there? But by the end of the film, I'd warmed to him immensely.
Yeah.
I felt very, very different towards his character at the end and the beginning. And I don't know whether that's maybe the production, although let's talk a wee bit around the film. Sean Penn, noted asshat, was an asshat to Michael J. Fox during filming to try to affect his performance, just being really nasty to him, saying demeaning things, what a tiresome prick Sean Penn, what a tiresome prick Sean Penn and his like are. And the arrogance of asshats like that to presume to treat other people badly to make their jobs unpleasant without mutual consent for something as inconsequential as a sodding movie. I do not care for people like that.
My dear boy, have you tried acting?
Yeah. I mean, method acting, if that's what gets you into your role, okay. But that you make the working environment unpleasant for other people, you don't have the right to do that. No. That's not your choice.
Yes.
But yeah, that's sort of more about how the film was made rather than what's in the film, though. In terms of what's in the film, the structure of it, there are a few things that I dislike, largely because they're so unnecessary. It's one thing in particular, which is the book ending. Like, it starts off with him on a streetcar in San Francisco, ends with him in a streetcar in San Francisco, and because he sees some Vietnamese woman who may even be played by the same woman that's...
Yeah, it was.
That's the rape victim. And it ends up with, like, you were having a bad dream, weren't you? And then, is that some sort of absolution for him, that he didn't save her?
Yeah.
That's a weird thing, and I don't like that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it was like, seeing this Vietnamese woman on the streetcar is supposed to have set him to this reverie. It's like, you don't need to have set that up. That's not the sort of thing someone's going to forget.
Yes.
So it's just like to say, this is something that prompted someone in IMDb to have to add the train that Ericsson's on at the start and end of the film is in fact actually in San Francisco. But the film ends with them getting out of a train in what is clearly San Francisco with San Francisco in the background. Why do people do these things on IMDb?
What a goof.
Anyway, the other thing which is I just found out recently too is that the real life Ericsson, or whatever his name was, I forget it now.
Yeah, that's right.
Spent a long time seeking out a trustworthy chaplain to confide in and start the investigation, someone who was at least the same rank as Dale Dye's character.
Yeah.
Whereas the film has him stumbled upon while drunk in a bar, and it's like, that's kind of weird actually. I think that sells your character better if you see how determined he is to make sure the truth gets out, not just sort of give up and start drinking.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
I find that an odd choice. I don't necessarily diminishes the film not much because the film has other problems, but it's odd when actually in real life he made a real determined effort.
Yeah.
Why not have that? And it wouldn't take you any more time to show that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting film. I think all three of these films are worth watching. None of them are, strictly speaking, enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
But they've all got something of interest in them.
Yeah, absolutely. They all should go on your list. Some of them are a bit more chores to get through than other ones, particularly Casualties of War. But I still get more out of Full Metal Jacket and Platoon. I'd certainly put them on your list to go through when you're in the mood for something a bit less light-hearted.
Yeah, I have actually recently got a hold of it. This Heaven and Earth with Tommy Lee Jones, which is the third part of Oliver Stone's Vietnam trilogy, and sometimes considered the best. It depends, everybody has an opinion I guess, but I've not watched that yet. But certainly Born on the 4th of July is pretty interesting if you've got more stomach for Oliver Stone and Vietnam films. And I might report back at some point about Heaven and Earth. Born on the 4th of July is worth checking out.
Yes, nothing else, we're due an Oliver Stone episode sometime soon, so we can maybe work into that.
You wanting to have an aneurysm talking about JFK and how angry it makes you.
I might have to set that bit out.